I'm Kathleen Berry, and I believe in ghosts. I want to thank Mike Epps for inviting me to come speak at A to Zen. And it's very fitting that I give this talk this month. This is the 10th anniversary of my discovery that ghosts are real. 10 years ago today, or not today, but probably next week, I was at the Goldfield Hotel with KTVN and Bill Brown, and I was the impartial observer. This is the Central Nevada Goldfield Hotel. Lots of times people automatically think Gold Hill, just because Gold Hill is closer. And it was a night that shattered my reality. It took God out of a very small box and made him much more wondrous and powerful to me. So we're going to have some fun tonight. We are going to, I'm going to tell you some ghost stories, and I'm going to tell you what I believe that tells us about the afterlife. So let's just kick back and we'll have fun. And I've got notes, but usually I just kind of use them as a jumping off point. So my book is A Reluctant Spirit. Let's see, let's go to that. A True Tale of God, Ghosts, and a Skeptical Christian. And it chronicles my journey from thinking that the paranormal was silliness to recognizing that there's so much more to our world than we know. So I've written this book. It got great reviews from Kirkus, a national reviewing agency that called it intriguing and a gripping account. And I'm very proud of that because I worked very hard on this book. And I also write a regular blog called God, Ghosts, and Gut Instincts. That's a combination of spirituality and paranormal and intuitive abilities. So visit my site anytime and you can check out the blogs. I'm also the manager of the Nevada Ghost and Paranormal series. And it's a series of classes held in September and October through Truckee Meadows Community College. They're non-credit classes, so you can't earn a degree in it. Unfortunately. Probably not from the professor's point of view, but it's a great program, and all the classes, if they're not ghost hunts, are held at the south end of Reno. So it's not a far drive. And they're usually like one-day classes, several hours each. And I've got two of my instructors here. Where are you guys? Okay, Gail and Pride. So in fact, I'm going to quote Pride a little bit later today. So you're in for it. Oh, I don't know. Oh, okay. So before I get started, you're not going to hear Stephen King stories from me. I believe that the media has hyped the fear of ghosts. Our fear of unknown has hyped the fear of ghosts. And that we need discernment and we need to be aware of what's around us. But for the most part, you don't need to fear the spirits of the other world. One, because they're like us. They're like people. Well, they're people without bodies. So, yeah, most of the people on the street aren't going to hurt you. That doesn't mean you want them in your house, but most of the people on the street will not hurt you. I also believe we have control over spirits in our space. And I believe that we can just tell them, no, leave me alone, go away, stop doing what you're doing, or setting boundaries. And I'll tell a story a little bit later about my mother scolding a ghost and it behaving after that. So basically, what I'm talking about spirits that used to be humans for the most part in this talk. I'm not delving into other areas. So, okay, 9 reasons ghosts visit us. Okay, You know them. I'm going to read this real quick and then I'll give you examples. You know them. They have fond memories of a place. They want to interact with people and have fun. They are energetically tied to a building, land, or object. They're afraid to move on to the light. They died suddenly and are confused. They have unfinished business here. They want to be remembered, or they are very protective. And I have stories for all of these. So let's start with the first one. You know them. I firmly believe that our crossed over loved ones visit us, that the death of the physical shell does not kill the love that we have for each other, and that when that person passes over into heaven, they can come down and visit you. You may not sense it, you may not know it, but I do believe that they're there when we need to feel love, when we need to feel support, and sometimes they'll let you know. So here are a couple stories. Here is Nancy, and she was one of our instructors for the Nevada Ghost and Paranormal series. And she developed pancreatic cancer, and she passed away. She always told us before she crossed over that she would let us know she was okay. And for her husband, she did it in pretty spectacular fashion. About 2 weeks after she passed, he was laying in bed at 3:30 in the morning. His cell phone went off. And he said, I'm just not going to answer that. So he went back to sleep. The next morning, he picked up his phone. He checked the messages, and it said there was a voicemail, but it didn't give a phone number. So he played the voicemail, and it was a woman's voice. And she said, Jim, this is Nancy. So he was kind of shaken by it, and he hung up, and he thought someone is playing a joke on me. And so he called AT&T, and he said, can you tell me what your logs show for who called my phone at 3:30 in the morning? And they checked, they couldn't find anything right offhand. They said, we'll send it to our tech people, we'll have them look. They got back to him and said, no one called you at 3:30 in the morning. But he has the voicemail, I've heard it. Another example is Harriet, another friend of mine. Her son had passed away. He had a chronic illness. And about 5 years after he passed, she came home from work one night, and there was a message on the machine. And it sounded very distant, and it was very staticky. But when she pushed play, he said, hi, Mom, I love you. And that was it. And she said it was his voice. It was the same exact voice he had before. And being 5 years later, she said, well, who would think about that? Who would think to harass me or be so mean to me to play such a joke? But she said that his voice was so authentic and so him that she just didn't have a doubt that it was him. One of my other A to Zen talks, I had a gentleman who came up to me afterwards, and he was telling me about his wife and about her visitation after she had passed away. He was making the bed in his house, and he looked up, and she was standing in the doorway. And they had been married for 59 years. And this was months after she crossed over, and he'd been having a really tough time. And he said that she was just as beautiful as she'd always been, and she looked identical to the days they were courting. And I'm going to read you exactly what he said because it's just so beautiful. She stood there for 30 seconds to a minute, but what she conveyed to me in that short time, the thoughts and feelings she put in my head, would take hours for me to tell you. She let me know she was content and well. She filled me with the love she had for me. She said there was nothing to fear on the other side, and that she would be waiting for me when my time came. Then she let me know it was time for me to move forward. She had helped me so much. I needed to know she was okay and that she still loved me. And she made those points abundantly clear. So the afterlife lesson with these stories is love transcends death. Love is eternal. God is love. God will not do anything to squash the love we have for each other. Number 2, they have fond memories of a place and they want to have fun. And 3, they want to interact with people. Now this threw me off when we were in the Goldfield Hotel, and one of the women that was the main investigators said, the spirits are around us and they're finding us very entertaining. They're laughing at us. And I'm thinking, spirits have fun? That's really kind of, because I still have Stephen King in the head, blood dripping from walls and things trying to kill you. Certainly not things laughing at you and finding you entertaining. So the Goldfield Hotel, which these are pictures of the ballroom with the piano and the lobby. The Goldfield Hotel, which opened in the early 1900s, was a place to be and a place to be seen. It had weekly dances that people from a very large radius would go, and it was just the social gathering place for that whole region. It is also believed by some to be the home of a vortex. So it makes it easier for spirits to come and go from that realm to this realm. But I want to tell you one of my favorite stories about the Goldfield that I did not experience myself. Virginia Ridgeway, the caretaker there, she'd been there, she was caretaker until I think early last year when she broke her hip. And she said she always had people coming, especially after ghost adventures. Get me in. I want to talk to the ghosts. I want to do this. I want to do that. And lots of times she let people in, but sometimes she didn't because she was very protective of the spirits there. Well, one day this guy came up to her house and he said, "Would you let me into the hotel? I want to play my guitar for the spirits." And she was so touched by that. And she said, no one had ever come up to me and said, "I want to give something to the spirits." She goes, everybody always came up to me wanting to get something from the spirits. So she took him in. He went to the second floor, and she sat downstairs in the lobby. And she sat there, and she could hear the music playing. And then suddenly, on the ceiling, she kind of started hearing these rhythmic noises that were just kind of going with the music. And then there were more and more and more. She realized they were the footsteps of unseen spirits dancing on the second floor to the music. And she said that building was filled with such a beautiful, loving energy. And I think, honestly, that's one of her favorite stories to tell, about someone giving back, about someone looking at energies as they're not something for you to abuse or be rude to, but to acknowledge and respect. Continuing with the dance theme, has anybody here been to the Washoe Club? I know a few of you have, because I've been there with you. So, upstairs is the Millionaire's Club. And it was a very high-priced brothel during the Comstock era. So we had one of our ghost hunting classes through the series up there. And I was with Sharon Leong's group from the San Francisco Ghost Society. And we were in the ballroom, and the windows were open. It was a very warm fall night. And one of the bars was playing music. And so she said, "Let's have fun." let's, just kind of sway the music, put out our arms, set boundaries, what's allowed, what isn't, and ask the spirit if it wants to dance with you. Excuse me. So we're all like this, looking like weird little zombies. And it was pretty amazing. I was growing out my bangs at the time, and they kept falling in my face, and it was really irritating me. And all of a sudden, I started feeling all this energy coming up my arms. And then I could feel fingers just brush away the hair out of my forehead. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. I said, thank you. But I did tell before I started dancing, it's like, you will touch my hands, you will not touch. It was a brothel after all. So I was setting a lot of boundaries. You will not do A, B, C, D, E, and certainly not F. Let me just get a little bit. Then, okay, I'm going backwards. This last spring, we went to St. Mary's Art Center. Shawnee over here, myself. And we went with a small group of women. And we spent the night there. And it's the former hospital and orphanage for Virginia City. Paula Burris, who organized the event, had set up some dowsing rods. Does everybody here know what dowsing rods are?
I don't.
They're copper rods with handles. And what you do is you hold them out. And you ask a question and you say, open for yes, close for no. They've been used for like water finding and stuff like that. And it's something that a lot of paranormal investigators use. So she had put them on a tripod so that she could take out the human element. I love skepticism. I believe we all need to be skeptical, and that something happens, we don't automatically say it's a ghost, unless it's beyond a reasonable doubt. If you have some equipment go off, check. Look around. Figure out if you can replicate it. So she had put them on this tripod. And I had walked around it, I had stomped around it, I'd kind of hit it, because I wanted to see if they would just move from the vibration. And nothing happened, they didn't move. Well, we had a teenage girl in our group who for a couple hours had thought that a teenage boy spirit was hanging around her. And she had been talking to him throughout the night. Now, realize that Paula had been trying this experiment with the dowsing rods on the tripod for a year and a half, and they had never moved on their own. So she was starting to give up. So this teenage girl was like, I think you're here. I think you're here. Can you show me that you're here? That this isn't my imagination, that you're here. And it looked like someone hit. The arms just like swung open wide and went like this. Oops. Just kind of like this, almost falling over. And we just kind of watched it in amazement, because it's not that often that you see a physical manifestation of energy. So, the afterlife lessons here are: spirits stay sentimental, spirits do want to have fun, and in many cases, spirits enjoy interacting with people. They're tied to a building, a land, or an object. And especially if you purchase an antique, you probably want to be aware of any kind of energy or feeling you get from that antique, because things can attach themselves to it. Usually they're things that have great personal value to that person. Say if a person built a house and they put a lot of themselves into it, then they may stick around after they pass away, just to kind of visit the house from time to time, since they put so much of themselves into it. Then there was my parents, who brought home an antique linen dresser. It was tall, was narrow. Not too long after they brought it into the house, the door of the garage, which wasn't far from that piece of furniture, started jiggling and stuff like someone was on the other side trying to get in. But every time they unlocked it and they looked in the garage, nothing was there. So my mother's very no-nonsense. This got old very quickly. So after a while, when it did it again, she goes, "Just stop now." It did, and never came back. I do recommend probably being a bit more polite. It worked. They're afraid to move on to the light. And I really don't believe there are many energies that are stuck here. I believe the vast majority do move on, and that they just come to visit time to time. But I do believe there are a couple instances where they get stuck. And one of those instances is when they regret what they did during their life, and they're afraid to move on to God and to be accountable to God. And they're not thinking about the love. They're thinking about the fire and brimstone God, not the God of love. This is a picture of Elizabeth's room in the Goldfield Hotel. And I talk about this one in my book. It was the first paranormal experience I had in the hotel. And Janice Elberding, who started our program, took me, as soon as we walked in, took me back to Elizabeth's room and said, "Go in." I had no idea what was going on. I didn't research the hotel. And I walked in, and it was like instant, horrible PMS. I thought I was going to break into tears. I had never felt so sad, so desolate, so desperate in my life. I knew something really bad had happened there. Then as soon as I walked out, it lifted, and I was fine. And I had the realization that they weren't my emotions, that they were someone else's. Now, the folklore about Elizabeth is varied, but I like the version Virginia, the caretaker, has. She used to go regularly visit Elizabeth, and they had a rapport. And she said that Elizabeth was a teenage girl who was impregnated by a very powerful man in Goldfield, and that he did not want to be disgraced. So he chained her to the radiator you see here. Chained her there while she was pregnant. She gave birth. No one knows if she died in childbirth, if she was murdered, if the baby died in childbirth, was murdered, or adopted. But it was a very sad place. I do believe that Elizabeth did finally move to the light. People, when Virginia's health started declining, people that knew Virginia would go in and they would leave the stuffed animals and they would leave flowers. And at Christmas, they would even put a Christmas tree out for her. So I think that love helped her to go to the other side. And I spoke to Virginia last week. She's in Reno now. And she said, "You know, Elizabeth comes and visits me now." So the tables have turned. So regret and fear can keep us from moving to the next realm and to the heavenly light. And I believe that's a mistake, because I believe that God wants us to succeed and God loves us, and that will always trump everything else. Oops. Okay, confusion can keep a spirit from moving on. So basically, I've had one experience. I was in a seance. I'm not a big seance person. I don't really like seances. They make me very uncomfortable. But I was at one seance, and the medium actually completely channeled someone. Her countenance changed, her vocabulary changed, her voice changed. It was really eerie to watch. And I was so new to all of this, it really kind of freaked me out. but the spirit of a teenage boy who was killed in the Yellow Jacket mine, which is right next to the miner's cabin at Gold Hill, came through and kept saying, someone has to tell my mom what happened. Someone has to tell my mom. I don't know where I'm at. It's dark. I'm not sure what to do. And that haunted me for a long time. And once I kind of realized that the power of prayer is very powerful, I would pray for him. And I've been back there other times, and I haven't sensed him, so I'm hoping that he moved on. Okay, this is my favorite historical one. I was not alive. It was 1888 in Carlin, Nevada, and one of the few hauntings that was covered by the media. Let me get one more drink of water before I start. These lights are really hot, so I'm hoping that I'm not glistening too much. Okay, so in 1888, Amelia Brewer and her husband George moved to Carlin, Nevada, an arid railroad community with about 400 souls. They rented an unpretentious 3-room house. I'm getting all this from the newspaper articles. On January 5th, 1889, Amelia wrote to the Elko Free Press about the haunting of their house. This is what she had to say. It is a little exciting when one has the good luck to move into a veritable haunted house. So far, the ghost hasn't scared any of us, but he is here just the same. Sometimes he taps on the headboard of the bed. Other times he stalks across the kitchen floor, and then he hammers away at the door, but no one is there. But the gayest of capers are cut up in the cellar. There he holds high revels and upsets the pickles and carries on generally. Not really sure what upsets the pickles means. I'm not sure if he was like pushing over bottles of pickled stuff or what, but that's what she said. So apparently Amelia and George had intuitive abilities. Amelia declared the spirit was a male, and after weeks of increasing paranormal activity, her husband went to investigate the cellar. Using an iron rod to probe the earthen floor, George found the partially charred and severed remains of miner rancher Miles Fawcett, who had disappeared a year earlier. George described what he found. I saw something that looked like a rotten turnip. I pulled it up and there was hair and a smell came with it. The reason Miles Fawcett was dead and buried in the basement was never completely clear, but this is what came out in the court trial. When Fawcett visited Carlin, he'd stay at the home of Josiah and Elizabeth Potts, which is the home that the Brewers had moved into. Elizabeth regularly washed Fawcett's clothes, and for a time, he boarded in their barn. On New Year's Day, 1888, an argument ensued between Fawcett and the Pottses. The Pottses claimed he tried to rape their 4-year-old daughter, and when caught, Fawcett committed suicide. But that didn't explain his dismemberment and being buried in the basement. A friend of Fawcett's testified that the Potts owned Fawcett money. Witnesses said they saw Fawcett pay for feed earlier that day, and that he had about $100 in $20 gold pieces. Elizabeth Potts told a different story. She declared that Fawcett owed them $180 for room and board, and that's why he signed over his team of horses and his ranch to them before he shot himself. But further incriminating the Potts was that after Fawcett disappeared, his ranch home was stripped of all valuables, some of which were found in the Potts' home. Josiah and Elizabeth were hung simultaneously on the same gallows on June 20th, 1890 in Carlin. It's said that once Fawcett's corpse was discovered, the ghost never bothered the inhabitants again. So he was seeking his style of justice. They want to be remembered. Another one of our ghost hunt field trips was at Buckland Station at Fort Churchill State Park. And Great place. It was a former Pony Express stop, a former stage stop. And we went there. And upstairs in one of the bedrooms, one of our participants had a ghost radar app on her cell phone. It cost a whopping $1. It's similar to an ovilus. And an ovilus place has like all these random words in it. And apparently what it says it does is that the energy picks these different words to send a message. And honestly, I find them very irritating. You go places and it's like, blue, yes, I like. And it's just like constant chatter, like someone that just really grates on your nerves. But anyway, she had this. And we were upstairs in this one bedroom. And it said, the words were, burn, child, frightened. Now, Ranger Paul at that time had given us a history of the building, and he had never mentioned anything about a fire. So I went down, and I said, were there any fires? Were there any children harmed? And he said, yes. Buckland's son was playing with a flame, and he burned himself so severely, he died 2 days later. Now, this was, I was stunned because I thought those things were nonsense. But the ranger hadn't told us. It wasn't something really publicized, so I don't think it could have been made up. Okay, I love this story. This is another Goldfield Hotel story. In 2012, a teenage boy broke into the Goldfield Hotel, decided he needed a souvenir. So he dug up this chunk of flooring. Dug it up, he took it home. Well, things didn't go well for his family after that. Several months later, the chunk of tile and the letter were propped up against the front door of the Goldfield Hotel. And this is what she said. The mother wrote it. She said that we have been plagued by problems ever since my son took these tiles. We started seeing small black shadows move about the house constantly. And we had 2 cars that needed to be towed. 2 car batteries died. Our motor scooter died and our riding mower stopped working, and we had 2 DVD players break. The last line of the letter is absolutely priceless. She wrote, I am very sorry for this, but the evil spirits are too strong. Now, who wants to bet that kid isn't going to do any more vandalism in his life after that experience? So, afterlife lesson is, you still care about people and places, and you'll still try to protect them. So I touched on this a little at the beginning, common misperceptions, that all ghosts are evil. I believe evil exists. I believe in the power of protection. I believe that you need to be aware of the energies around you, because by denying it and ignoring it, you are not protecting yourself. With that being said, I think the vast majority spirits are just like people, not a threat to you. However, if you are going to do things that, in my opinion, open a doorway and make a space for you to indiscriminately invite any energy into your space, this is not a good thing. And I believe personally, and I know a lot of people that disagree with me, that Ouija boards are trouble. And as Pride Hansen said in one of his classes, he likened a Ouija board to go to the worst part of your town, take your keys, your house keys that have your address on it, throw them up in the air, leave them there, and say, anybody that wants to come join me. Now, would you do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you're not going to invite strangers into your home, why would you invite strange spirits, and why would you invite possible entities that you don't know what their nature is? I think ghost hunting is fun. Paranormal is fun. but you have to take it seriously. You have to respect it. Ghosts always appear disfigured and gross. This is another Stephen King thing. Knock on wood. That's not wood. I'm pretending wood. I have not seen anything disfigured and in bad shape. And I think it does happen, but if you think about it, if you're going to present yourself to strangers, are you going to be wearing your grubbiest, tattered clothes and not have showered in 5 days, or portray yourself in your most gruesome way? Maybe if you have a really sick sense of humor. But otherwise, most of us want to look our best. So lots of times when you hear about these stories, people are in their prime. When people describe what they see, they're whole, they look great. Anne Leong, who's one of our teachers in the series, took a great picture at Gettysburg of a Civil War soldier. And it is the only apparition picture I've ever seen that I truly believe. And you can see through him. But he's clean, and his uniform looks pressed. There's no dirt, there's no blood, there's no bullet holes, there's nothing. And you can see through him. But he looked really spiffy. I mean, he looked very complete, very young. Ghosts have superhuman strength. And I think it was Paranormal Activity, where they grabbed the woman out of bed and drug her into hell. Well, I don't believe, in the vast, vast majority of cases, any kind of entity is going to drag you into hell. We'll talk about possession in a minute, but I don't believe that happens for the most part. And the most I've ever seen move is at this gentleman's cabin, Frank Sinatra, at the Cal Neva Lodge in North Shore, Tahoe. And I was there with KTVN about a month after we went to the Goldfield Hotel. Now, I have since learned that if electronics have a lot of difficulty, there will be paranormal activity. I believe that the energies use the energy from these different pieces of equipment to harness their own ability. So the fresh camera battery for KTVN went out. So I was helping the cameraman get a new battery, and we were both looking down. And all of a sudden we heard this piece of plastic just like fall and hit something hard. And everybody went, "Oh!" And we looked up and they said, the TV remote levitated like 6 inches off the dresser by itself and then just dropped. So that's really rare, and that takes a lot of energy for a spirit to do. Ghosts can force you to perform evil acts against your will. I believe that God gives us control over the entities that visit our realm. And I also believe that you'll only do evil if you have an excuse that you want to do evil. Now, this is not, possession is different. I haven't seen any cases of possession, but I have heard of some possessions. And I believe if something like that happens, you have to get to a qualified clergy member or a qualified exorcist as soon as possible to get yourself cleared. And we actually have a clergy person who's performed exorcisms in this room today. So I'm sure he can attest to that and that it does happen. And I also think it's interesting that Pope Francis has reinstituted exorcism, and that he even held an exorcism conference that was attended by 160 priests from across the world. Okay, death is a transition, not an end. This is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned through the ghost encounters that I have had. I no longer fear death because I see it as a transition. We transition to our purest self. We drop away greed and politics and things like that that are superficial, that really aren't a part of us, but can cause us to do things on this realm that are not good things to do. I believe that we take the lessons we've learned from this existence into the next life. I have a friend who passed away 3 weeks ago, and she was looking forward to her passing. She called it, she would be graduating from Earth School, and she was looking forward to the next phase of her life. I also believe that our growth continues after our physical body is gone, that all the things that we've done to people, maybe hurt people, we'll recognize that once we've crossed over. We understand the situations. We can see what they're going through. And if we've done substantial harm, I believe, my personal belief is that you will have to work here in this realm, probably as an energy, to try to work things out. And by the way, and I usually say this at the beginning of all my talks, for those of you who've heard me before, is these are my truths. I'm not trying to make any of you believe like I do. These are based on my experiences and what I believe is true. But everybody in this room has a different religious belief system. They have different experiences, and that will shape what your truth is. I do not have all the answers. I don't think any of us do until we do cross over. How spirits manifest themselves. Let me get another quick drink. Okay, touch. I've known quite a few people who have been touched during spirit encounters. One of my favorite stories is a dear friend who lost her husband at a young age. 6 months after he passed away, she was laying in bed, and she was feeling very desperate about how financially she was going to take care of her children. She was laying there in bed, wide awake, and all of a sudden she could feel something come down on her feet over the bedspread, and something grab her toes and just start shaking them. And she started laughing. That was something her husband would do. He would work late many times, and he would come home at night and wake. That's how he would wake her up. So she knew he was there, and she knew he was telling her it would be okay. And all of her financial problems just seemed to evaporate. Within 24 hours, all these things came together, and she was able to pay her bills. Smell. You go someplace, and you're almost assaulted by a smell. It comes on very suddenly. You can't smell anything else. And then as soon as you acknowledge it, it just dissipates, and it's gone. I've had that happen quite a few places. At the Goldfield Hotel, we had it happen in the lobby with eau de toilette, perfume, and lavender on the second floor. And on the second floor, there were 2 of us that simultaneously experienced it. And then it's gone. It's gone in a flash. You know, it doesn't linger. It's not like a regular perfume where it lingers for a long time. It's like there, and then it's gone. Sound. I worked at the Lake Mansion in Reno, which is Reno's oldest building. At that point, it was at the corner of Kitski in South Virginia. We had 2 men that worked in our department at various times. We were an office of all women, except for the one token male. And each of them had very distinct encounters in that building. The first time was our photographer was upstairs. He liked to get into work like at 6 a.m., get things done. And my coworker and friend Lenore came in at about 7:30 that morning, and she came in the side door, and she started on the steps, and Gary ran out, and he was white, And he said, oh, thank God it's you, Lenore, thank God it's you. And she's like, why? And he goes, because about 15 minutes ago, something ran up the stairs, stopped at the doorway, and just looked at me. And he goes, I could feel it. I didn't see anything. I heard it. I could feel it. And she said, here was this big macho guy, raced cars and everything else. And she said he was terrified. Then our second photographer, he was working late one night. And I guess it wasn't too late because it was snowing out and it was still light. And he heard someone at the front door. And he heard knocking and rattling of the front knob. As he went down the steps, he saw a silhouette of a person there. And he's like, wait, because we really didn't use the front door much. So he finally got the front door open. No one was there. But he said the really creepy part was there was about 2 inches of snow on the porch, and there were no footsteps. Sight. Spirits can use sight. I've heard many stories about spirits appearing in mirrors and scaring people to death, and it being so real that people think someone has broken into their house to find that everything's locked in, no one lives there. But one of my favorite sight stories isn't an apparition. It was at the Millionaire's Club in Virginia City with KTVN in 2008. At that point, the Millionaire's Club was condemned. There was like a huge hole between the third and second floor that you could look down into. It was in really bad shape. And when we were going up the stairs between the second and third floor, the stairwell was very rickety. You couldn't use the banister, and you had only one person at a time could be on it because it would start to pull away from the wall. So it was very creepy. So as I did in all those ghost hunts, I was always in the middle. I'm not going to be the first to encounter something, and I'm not going to be bringing up the rear where something can come at me. I'm a coward. I am. And so I went up. I was in the middle of the group, and I got about halfway up. Saw this softball-sized light go across. Just very straight line. It was generating its own light. And I thought, that's really weird. And, oh, I think I have a photo. Not of the orb. I wish I had a photo of that. But this is the stairwell years later after it had been repaired. There were no windows there. There was nothing that could have projected the light. And like I said, it was generating its own light. So I went up and I'm thinking, that was really weird. And I wasn't really sure what I saw. Well, a few minutes later, Bill Brown came up. He got apparently about halfway up the stairs. I heard a string of expletives. I will not share here. And then he came running up. And he was just almost panicked. And we're like, what happened? What happened? And he goes, well, I saw this white ball of light. And it started going by. And then he goes, it like stopped just opposite my face. And then it came hurling towards my face. And he says, I had to duck. I really thought it was going to hit me. So, of course, this is an old brothel, so you can surmise that maybe one of the ladies of the night are still there and she doesn't like men too much. Another Lake Mansion story. I was the publicist there for the Convention Authority, and I was publicizing the Festival of Trees. And I thought it'd be nice to have an old-fashioned setting for our press conference. So I asked the Lake Mansion Historical Society, can I use your parlor? Because our offices were upstairs. And they said, yes, but anything you move has to be put exactly back where it was. Make a map, put everything back. Be very careful. So I moved out everything except the heaviest pieces. I moved porcelain figurines, all these things, into another room. The janitors were cleaning up. I went upstairs. I put the map in my desk, came down. Janitors were gone. I locked up. came back early in the morning because it was an earlier press conference, I think 9 a.m. So I got there about 7. Every single thing had been put back in its place. I was angry because I'm like, I did all this work. I'm in high heels. I'm moving things again. So I called the maintenance office and I said, why did you guys put it back? And I'm like, Kathy, our people haven't been back to that building since they left when you were there. So I went up, I grabbed the map. Everything had been put in exactly the same place it had been. So I had to really scramble to be ready for that press conference. There are other ways I've talked about them. Electronics, if power starts to go out, or harnessing like TVs and stuff like that. Things like that can be used. Temperature changes, cold spots, things like that. Do that. And also leaving gifts. I have a handful of people I know who their loved ones will leave pennies in really odd places, or feathers, and just very strange things that you would not find them. And they're convinced that's a message from their loved one. So I want you to know how grateful I am that you guys came out on your Friday night to come hear me tonight. Thank you so much. I understand your time is valuable, and I hope you enjoyed it. I am out there to sign books or answer questions. If you want to ask any questions now, that's great. My book is being sold by A to Zen, and I have postcards for the Nevada Ghost and Paranormal series if you're interested in that as well. Any questions?
Do you believe in guardian angels?
Absolutely. I believe we all have angels around us. I believe that we can always call on angels if we need extra help. But I firmly believe that we all have guardian angels looking out for us and protecting us and guiding us. I am a firm believer in divine guidance from God and his emissaries.
I had an experience and I didn't believe it until I had the experience.
Yeah.
I don't, not great detail. I had some really major surgery not too long ago. It was pretty nip and tough. And I know that at the foot, I don't know if it was in the operating table or if it was afterwards, but I absolutely, totally swear to God, there were 2 silhouettes at the end of my bed.
Fantastic.
And I just kept saying, am I going to be all right? Am I going to be all right? And they just...
Now, did you feel anything from them? Did you feel love? Did you feel compassion?
It lasted for probably no more than 30 seconds to maybe 1 minute tops, but there were 2 silhouettes and they were profile this direction and this direction.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I just...
That's a wonderful story.
They just go, yeah, it was the Johns.
Oh, no, I'm 100% convinced that angels exist and that angels do come to our realm. I know some people say, oh, that was only biblical times. No. I've sensed them. I've had miracles happen. I'm completely convinced that what you're saying is true.
You believe in reincarnation? Spirits.
Yeah, I'm probably closer to believing in it now than I ever have. I'm still a little skeptical, but more and more things have happened that make me think that we probably have had other lives. Biblically, I'm not sure what I think about that, and as a Christian, but I feel like I'm being shown more and more things that would indicate that we've probably lived multiple lives. And there have been studies in India in particular where they're studying children that know incredible details from like 100 years ago and can say where they lived and all this other stuff that there's no way 3- and 4-year-olds could know. So then you start to question, okay, how could these kids know things that they were able to go back and research and find that what they were saying was accurate? Anybody else have questions? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you believe they can read your thoughts, or do you have to vocalize?
No, you do not have to vocalize. I believe that we're all connected by the same energy, and that energy, especially when you don't have a body, like when we cross over, we know what's going on. We know the turmoil in our loved ones' lives. We know what's going on. Now, you can block it, and you can say, okay, I don't want energies in my space, and I don't want energies doing that, but I think they can. And if you think about someone, I think it's very likely they could come through just because they know you're thinking about them. Okay. All right, did anybody else have one? Okay.
Yeah, I just got one last one. Evil spirits. Are there evil spirits? And are you relating that to the, obviously you believe in God, you believe in heaven. Is there a hell? You believe the devil, the evil spirits?
Okay, and I've honestly gone back and forth a lot on evil. You know, I've come to the conclusion there is evil. There is evil on this planet. There is evil in the spirit world. I no longer believe in hell. I believe that we've got an all-loving God and that hell is self-imposed, something that we do when we put a barrier between us and the universal power. I believe we can create a worse hell for ourselves than someone who loves us unconditionally.
Believe in the devil.
I believe in evil. I don't think I believe in the devil so much. I believe in evil. I believe in evil spirits. I believe in the ego overpowering, and the ego can kind of take the shape of the devil for me. And like I said, you know, I'm still working through a lot of this, and I don't have all the answers, but there are things that I've thought a lot about, and evil is one of those. Because I know a lot of TV shows are like, there's a demon to the right of me, a demon to the left of me, a demon in front of me. And there are people that say the Goldfield Hotel is filled with demons. Well, the people that say that are the people that go in there and start screaming and yelling and demanding and being rude. So how would you feel if someone walked into your house and started screaming and demanding and being rude? You're not going to be very nice. So.
Have you done any paranormal, have you done anything at the Nevada State Prison?
Funny you should say that. We had an investigation scheduled for last fall, but they couldn't get their special use permit. So we're hoping that once they get their special use permit, the former warden there who's on the board said that he will allow us to hold our class there.
How did the Paranormal TV show?
They got in there before they knew a lot about the permits they had to get. So in fact, you know, when the prison told us we could go there, they were training all their docents and all their tour guides because they really thought they were going to open within a couple months. And then they realized that they had to get architectural plans and bring in contractors to do some things to make it up to code. So, thank you so much, everybody. I'll be out there. Please come by and say hi. I'd love to sign your books. But thank you very much.